Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynor. So what I want to do in this video is I want to give some theory that will set a nice foundation for New Year's. And I want to make a couple videos after this one giving the self-help side of the personal development coin. I like to think of personal development as a coin, and one side of the coin we can call spirituality, and the other side of the coin we can call self-help. And they're not antagonistic toward each other at all, although people on the path, especially young on the path, definitely think that they are and feel that they are mutually exclusive. So if you're really into practical self-help, you're probably going to think that the spirituality stuff is woo-woo, right? If you're really into the spirituality stuff, you're going to have this attitude that practical self-help is for like stupid humans or something along those kinds of lines. And actually, it doesn't have to be a conflict here. And for at least 10 years now, I've been working on self-help, and since at least 2017, I've been developing my own theory for life coaching, especially around 2019. Between 2019 and now, I was kind of more in like a teacher mode, whereas now I feel like calling yourself a teacher can be kind of a trap on the path. And the best teacher is actually the person who's just kind of the amateur who's sharing, right? Stuff that they know how to do. And that's exactly the position that I have now. So it's not that I stopped being a teacher. It's just that I stopped being a teacher, if that makes sense. But sharing as opposed to kind of telling has really been the biggest shift for me. And so about in 2019 or so, I developed my 10 areas of life coaching model. And the interesting thing about this model is that it's a sequence that can be flipped around the other way. So depending on if you're looking at like human self-help or spirituality or spiritual enlightenment, it's going to be the same list, but it's going to be inverted for one or the other. So my 10 areas of life coaching, just give you the list right now, are accountability, action, energy, spirituality, creativity, happiness, knowledge, relationships, health, and finances. So accountability, action, energy, spirituality, creativity, happiness, knowledge, relationships, health, finances. Now, the last three, relationship, health, finances, that's like the root chakra. That's like the human. This is the core of human self-help. Relationships, health, finances. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have spirituality, right? Spirituality is probably not going to get you more dollars in your bank account. Actually, probably quite the opposite. Spirituality is, it's the dark side of the moon. It's the other side of the coin from what we might think of as human self-help. But remember, it's all one coin. These things aren't at war with each other. You can still allow yourself, or in my case, Joseph Maynor, to practice human self-help or Jiva self-help within the dream. That's just going to become a part of the dream, and that's enjoyable. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? You might as well work on something that at least gives you some kind of a hope that that you're benefiting something, even if you're not. So hope is important for the human. I mean, people who say they don't care about human happiness are wrong. I mean, it's here. I mean, you watch and see how fast you ban somebody from your community who pisses you off. I don't care if you're Muji or, some internet guru or internet spiritualist. If you don't like somebody, you're going to kick them out just because you're concerned with your human happiness, right? In the dream is samsara. Nobody is perfect in the dream. So it's almost like we can zoom into the finite or we can zoom into the infinite. And I would argue that you can do both at the same time. That's the higher teaching. That's like post-enlightenment work. But the problem is that when you're young on the path, you're going to think that one of these two has to be right and the other one has to be wrong. So first of all, let me explain what it looks like from the human side of the coin. So if we take my 10 areas of life coaching model, what would be the order from a human area, right? So if we're working on human self-help, what would the order look like? Well, it would look like this. Accountability would be number 1. Number 2, I have a cluster of 3. So there's actually only 7 categories because I have 3 in a cluster. Relationships, health, and finances I have in a cluster. And I also have action and energy in a cluster too. So I've taken my 10 areas of life coaching model and broke it down into 7 categories. So the categories are as follows. The first category is accountability. The second category is relationships, health, finances. The third category is action and energy. The fourth category is knowledge. The fifth category is creativity. The sixth category is happiness. Now, this is human happiness. And the seventh category is spirituality, which you might consider to be like divine happiness, divine love, divine truth. That's the crown chakra, right? So the root chakra would be the individual human self-help, and the crown chakra would be spiritual enlightenment. But you realize too that the chakras model, this is actually a little bit more nuanced than the chakras model is, my model. The just a little bit, they have different, if you look at a Venn diagram, they have an intersection, but they're two very different systems. So, the way that these 7 areas are related for practical human self-help is accountability is number 1. Number 2, relationships, health, finances. Number 3, action and energy. Number 4, knowledge. Number 5, creativity. Number 6, happiness. Number 7, spirituality. So spirituality is at the bottom, right? After all, you're focused on the finite perspective. Okay, now, if you're on the other end of the coin and you're working on spirituality, the values are going to be the other way around. So number 1 is going to be spirituality. Number 2 is going to be happiness. Number 3 is going to be creativity. Number 4 is going to be knowledge. Number 5 is going to be action and energy. Number 6 is going to be relationship, health, finances. And number 7 is going to be accountability. Aren't spiritual people like the least accountable people that you know of, right? I remember because it's in the shadow of that. I remember when I was I first joined the actualize.org forum. I was very much personally into the human self-help stuff. And my first impression of the spiritual people were like, these people are totally action faking. They're lost in a fantasy world because they don't want to work very hard. They don't want to be accountable. And so they're kind of like Peter Pan. They develop this like, kind of fantasy world where they can feel okay and like they're advancing in personal development, but they're not actually like they're not accounting for anything, and they don't have any accountability because they don't even think that they have a self. And then I flipped the other way. Like after a couple of years on that forum, I did a bunch of psychedelics, and I got really much into spirituality, where I became one of those people that was like, there is no me, I'm never walking through a door. You know what I mean? I'm awareness itself. Like I swung really hard in that direction. And now what I realize is like, that's good. Like, yeah, it's good to be integrous and to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time by accepting that, human self-help and spiritual enlightenment are really two sides of the same coin. And actually there's no conflict there. But I think it's also important too in growth to overplay and then get schooled and then swing really hard in the other direction as a reaction and then get schooled again. It's like a pendulum that like swings back and forth, and then it takes a while to just like stop right at the center, but it has to like swing before it can stop. That's a strange analogy that I just suddenly for some reason thought was appropriate, and it's actually kind of cool. So that being said, if what we're focused on for New Year is human self-help, because that's what we want to, I'm going to give you guys, I spent a few years working on my practical human life coaching stuff. So this 10 areas of life coaching model that I have broken down into 7 groups, or 7 categories, I've used this myself, and actually I'm going to use it again for this New Year's. And I've developed little theories for each one of these things. Like, so for example, I have my 12 areas of fulfillment model, and that's going to be unique to each person, and that covers happiness on this checklist. I also have an accountability system that I use, and that those of you who were on my Discord Accountability Partners community, you remember me using that, falling very short most of the time, but still you could see that I had a system for that. So accountability is number 1, okay? And I'll state these all again, and then I'll explain a little bit about each one. And then once we have this theory, this is good theory. See, good theory in practical self-help actually aids taking action. So in practical human self-help, the goal is to develop a work ethic. That's the goal. But a work ethic is a skill, just like playing chess. Or just like an athlete, like if you want to become a runner, or you want to become a tennis player, or you want to become a guitar player, you got to work on self-help a little bit every day, just like you work on those things. I used to love that when I first joined the Actualized Forum, and Leo Guru was like, fall in love with self-help or fall in love with personal development. Man, that changed my life, because personal development is my number 1 value. But then the problem is it led to me doing some action faking, because I was valuing knowledge over accountability. So you notice that with regard to the human, I mean, if you look at Stage Orange only cares about knowledge when it's really necessary, right? Stage Orange is more concerned about just taking action. Just do it, right? The Nike shirt with the swoosh. You see people wearing the Nike swoosh anywhere on their body, you can guarantee that they have the mentality that action is more important than knowledge is. Knowledge only becomes relevant when you can figure out a way to take more action with less cost, like building a farm in Minecraft, or investing your money, in some way that works out for you. or leveraging reality in some way to get a lot more result for less input. But it's always practical results. That's the focus in human self-help. In spirituality, the other side of the coin, it's spiritual attainment. That's the most important thing. Spiritual attainment has almost nothing to do with the human. Okay. Even radically so. But then there's a post-enlightenment where you dip back into the dream, but you're dipping back into the dream from having been, it's like going back to the light side of the moon, having explored the dark side of the moon. Like you were on the light side of the moon, then you went to the dark side of the moon, and then you came back to the light side of the moon with an understanding of like deeper context and seeing the shadow side of where you started. And ditto, going back to the dark side of the moon from the light side of the moon, you go back into spirituality, but now you're like, you have less of a conflict between the human and the divine. You're more open to like saying things like it's okay to be a finite perspective, like it's okay to be Joseph Maynor. Yeah, I want to shake some of these spiritual people sometimes and say like it's okay to be you, man. It's okay to be you with the little y, not just you with the big Y. Like you got that little you in your shadow. Like you almost just want to say to somebody like, dude, it's okay to be you. You don't have to hide from reality anymore by living in this kind of suspended little bubble that you've created, right? Or that you are. So I'm going to skip my break today because that's just going to cut off my flow. That's why you need energy for practical development work, right? You need energy. Without energy, you ain't doing shit. You're not taking any action, right? So the values for human self-help are as follows. Accountability is number one. Accounting. This is keeping daily records of tasks, like an omnibus project list, checklists, goals, and accounting. You're not going to do this all the time, but it's something that you can do a little bit every day. Like you're not going to play chess. You're not going to play chess for like 5 hours a day, but you can play one game a day. So your accountability doesn't have to be ridiculously difficult. In fact, if you make it too ridiculously difficult, you're just not going to do it, right? Like it's better to actually like play a game of chess every day than it is not to play a game of chess, even if you're, or just going out and playing the guitar. Playing the guitar for 30 minutes a day, even if you're not doing anything special, is still better than not playing the guitar at all. So just being able to do a little bit of accountability every day. And it could be as simple as having an omnibus to-do list in one electronic file, and then in another electronic file, just keep a log of how many of the tasks that you completed each day. And cross the items off on your omnibus to-do list. And if you just kept that one record, you could practice accountability. But I have a very elaborate system that ultimately I want to kind of implement in a website, because I do web development. I'm not very good at it, but I could get better at it. And I want to develop like a human, because my life purpose is has to do with personal development, but my niche is accountability, actually. So like my ideal project would be to design something like Chessly, like Levi Rosman's website, but for human self-help. Where, you can get streaks, you can get awards, you can do drills, you can watch videos, because the human is like, once you figure out certain things about your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses, your goals. Really, it just comes down to like balancing in the right way and actually taking the actions so that you don't burn yourself out and so that you can do something slow and steady and have fun while you're doing it too. So for human self-help, accountability is number one. Number two is relationships, health, and finances. These are the key three areas of human self-help, or the root chakra. Relationships, health, finances. Those all kind of work together too. You notice that? Like the better relationships you have, the better your finances are usually. Like, oftentimes the better your finances are, the better your health is too, right? I think poor people just, they just have bad health because they can't afford fresh food, you know? Like they can't buy from Whole Foods or Whole Paycheck, right? They got to eat fast food all the time, and now it costs a fortune to even eat fast food. So I don't even know what the really poor people are doing now. Probably stealing from Walgreens, right? That's actually not very funny, but okay. So relationship, health, and finances is number two. Relationships, working on your relationships. This doesn't just include like romantic relationships. This includes your relationship with yourself as a human too. Your own personal self-esteem, your own personal pride. Yes, I said it. I said pride. Those of you guys who are into spirituality, you're going to be like want to kill me, right? But then that's your finite perspective showing its pride too. The difference between you and me is that I accept the finite perspective on some level, whereas you have that in your shadow. Or not. So what's number three for human practical self-help? Boy, it's action and energy, isn't it? You ain't going to do shit if you don't take any action. And you're not going to take any action if you don't have any energy. So this is the problem with being a drug addict and somebody whose diet is really bad. You know, you don't have any energy, you're not going to take any action. How are you going to like work a job, let alone take care of your own housekeeping stuff? Like being able to pay rent. So now you got to live on the street. Your problem is you don't have the energy, the accountability to be able to take the action. So, but like I said, there's a way to work on this slowly. There's a way to develop accountability. There's a way to prioritize health, finances, and relationships first. Then there's a way to prioritize action and energy. Notice how we haven't talked about knowledge yet, right? We haven't talked about spirituality yet. We haven't talked about creativity yet. We haven't even talked about happiness yet. Those are later on down the chain for practical human self-help stuff. Because practical human self-help stuff is all about you taking actions in the finite world that are important to you. And having some kind of rhyme or reason for why you're doing that. So number 4 is knowledge, but it's not philosophical knowledge. It's more like practical knowledge, like understanding how systems work, but like more from like a Stage Orange perspective. Like if you play Minecraft, it's understanding the rules of Minecraft. That's what knowledge would be like from a human self-help perspective. So that you can leverage everything in that practical survival world to the best that it can be used for what you want to do or what those values are. And number 1, the value for human self-help work is good survival, right? You want to have good survival for you and good survival for others, the people that you impact. You want to be moral, right, as a human. Whereas in spirituality, we tend to think that trying to be moral is a trap. But isn't it funny how like it is and it isn't, right? Like it's the paradox that people don't want to accept, right? They don't want to accept it is and it isn't, right? No, like it's got to be one thing or the other. This exclusive or mentality. So knowledge was number 4. Number 5 is creativity. But it's creativity with the focus on the practical. Like think of the creativity that you can use in survival Minecraft. Like creativity in the sense that you can use your knowledge to leverage lots and lots of value from things by using creativity. So, this gets into designing all the farms that you design, right? You might design an iron farm, you might design a villager trading hall. Sorry that for those of you who don't know anything about Minecraft, I think you can kind of still see what I'm talking about, right? So creativity in the human self-help way is figuring out creative ways to generate health, finances, and relationships primarily. I was and you could think of this model as an example of creativity that I'm giving you. It's like, or somebody gives you a book on chess, and you're able to then integrate that knowledge into your play, which is creativity. So your creativity leverages knowledge. So that's why knowledge is more important than creativity by one step. But creativity is how ingenious you are at producing health, finances, and relationships in ways that are actually healthy for you. Like they're not overextend. You can overextend very easily, and this is where you swing back into spirituality and you say, oh, human self-help is no good, right? No, you got to take it easy, man. You got to take it easy. You're not Tony Robbins. Don't try to be Tony Robbins. Don't try to be Magnus Carlsen. You know what I'm saying? You're Joseph Maynor, some schlub on YouTube, with just nobody really knows about, except for those of you who do know me and care about me. And I appreciate you too. But in general, people don't know about me, and that's fine. I don't seek to be anything more than what I am. So, and that keeps me happy doing human self-help work, because I'm not like whipping myself because I've got to be the best. You know what I mean? Like that book, The Dip, by forget who wrote that. But he makes this whole spiel about, well, you shouldn't get into something unless you want to go all the way. Yeah, well, that's how you burn yourself out too, right? Be careful with that one. But that's good advice, for some people, especially people that are young on the path who are swinging really hard into that kind of Stage Orange style human self-help. And human self-help doesn't have to be Stage Orange. I just use Stage Orange as an example because Stage Orange is when this really strive drive mentality, human strive drive really becomes important. So number 6 would be happiness. But this is something more like human happiness, like fulfillment. Number 7 is spirituality. So spirituality is at the bottom. That's why when you're into human self-help work, like the spiritual people just look like lunatics to you, right? Because in this value, on this side of the coin, like on the light side of the moon, the dark side of the moon looks like dangerous and mysterious, right? From the dark side of the moon's perspective, the light side of the moon seems like lost in a kind of, fantasy world or something like that, or like spiritual people looking at people like Tony Robbins, kind of making fun of Tony Robbins. If there's no self, how can you take any action, so on and so forth. So, okay, friends, I'm out of time. So I would say probably for the practical thing, just next week I'm gonna give you some ideas for accountability. And I would say the first step in doing human self-help work is make an omnibus project list. Start, though, with the focus on relationships, health, and finances only. Later on, we'll add in when we get into happiness, we'll add in stuff like your fulfillment areas, your life purpose work. But you got to have your priorities straight, right? Make an omnibus project list only concerning relationships, health, and finances. Okay, friends? Good talking to you. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.